Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. So today I'm talking to you about Chapter 6 from Ria's book, The Ladder of Influence, 5 Steps for Climbing to the Next Level and Beyond. And today we're talking about demonstrating self-control at home. In the book, Chapter 6 is actually titled The First Step at Home, but if you've been following along, you know the first step is control of self. So that's what I want to talk to you about a bit today, and a bit what she discusses in this chapter. I'll start off today with a quote from Joseph B. Wirthlin. He says, "Self-control is one mark of a mature person. It applies to control of language, treatment of others, and the appetites of the body." Wow, that's one I'm struggling with. Appetites of the body. I'm talking about. I'm seeing him meaning that as food. As I get older and I got different little health issues going on my back and my shoulders and my knees, my legs, different things like that. Birthdays catch up with you, and I can't be quite as active as I used to be, and I want to be, but then my old age starts telling on me, and then I had to stop doing everything and heal up over that. So anyway, I'm having to adjust how I'm eating, how much I'm eating, relative to how much I'm exercising. Still seem to be all right on the mountain bike. I'm back on the mountain bike after 5-10 years of not really riding it, so that's good. But I'm just trying to figure out my sweet spot for what can I do. But the hard thing is about cutting back on the food. But that's self-control. That's just one example. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this episode. I'll be sharing the checklist from Ria's book. And while you're listening, if you're listening where you can stop and pause and make some notes when I get to that checklist, you may have some other things that I might provoke some thought within you that causes you to want to add some things to your checklist. Make yourself a customized checklist. But her checklist in her book is, if you can just check off the things I'm going to share with you from her book, this chapter 6, you're doing pretty good. But we can always get better, and we can always expand this list. But I'm just going to tell you, checking off this short list that I'm going to give you, it's pretty tough. You got to do a lot of internal work relative to control of self to be able to do that. So the essence of control of self is being able to lead and influence yourself in a way that allows you to increase your influence with others personally, at home, which is what we're talking about today, and professionally at work, which is what we'll talk about next episode. I got a checklist, similar checklist that can help you learn how well you're doing relative to controlling yourself at work. But that ain't today's episode. Today's about controlling ourselves at home. And for most people, it's easier to control themselves at work or in public. And the reason that is most often the emotions are stronger at home. Emotions relative to yourself, how you're interacting with people in your personal life. And when I say at home, I am talking about at home, literally. But also I'm talking about not at work. When I'm talking about at home, I'm talking about in your personal life, but not really in public, but mostly at home. But again, your personal life, maybe with your close friends or some of your relatives. That's kind of what I'm talking about at home. Close friends, relatives, people you live with, especially the people you live with, right? Your immediate family members, anyone living in your house. So that's what we're kind of going to focus on today. But it's tough. You got lots of emotions. Some people have really strong emotions at work if they're really attached to their job, the work they're doing, the mission they're on, that sort of stuff. And we'll touch on that next week. But I just want to mention emotions can be strong at work just as well. So when we're talking about having control of self, physically it means being able to control our choices. I talked about a lot about that last week. Also, our habits and our physical actions, just like having control of our emotions. So we got emotion. When it comes to control of self, we got to focus on our controlling our emotions, but we also got to control our choices, habits, behaviors, actions. All those kind of roll into one. So let's go ahead and dive into this checklist that Ria's got. And again, I encourage you to get the book, because there's a lot of stuff I'm not sharing that's in the book. I'm just kind of taking a few of her points, sharing my own thoughts. But the checklist is in the book, and you can check it off. You can make notes. But I'm just telling you, if you are getting value out of this series, you ain't getting as much value probably as you'll get out of the book. But you marry the two together, you're going to get more value. There's going to be a synergy between going through the book and going through this podcast series. And again, we've got the 7.5-hour course with Ria and I teaching on video at bluecollarleadership.com, and look for the online training courses menu, or go to bluecollarleadershipacademy.com. It'll take you right there to it, and you can look around. Anyway, let's get to this list. This list going to cause you to look in the mirror. I know it did when I started reading it. I was like, she must just thought about all the stuff I'm not doing wrong or not doing right, and made this list, because we're all human. Yeah, we can say we're doing pretty good, but when we look in the mirror and really reflect on how are we really doing, most time we really ain't doing it near as well as we could be, no matter how good we may be doing. And it's all relative. That's why we need to look in the mirror and don't look out the window and judge how we're doing compared to everybody else. That's easy to find somebody doing worse. It's also easy to find someone doing better, but neither one of those things matters. We need to quit looking out the window, start looking in the mirror and say, how am I doing relative to how I could be doing if I chose to become more intentional about being a better person? All right, let's go. So this checklist is to help you focus on control of self in specific areas at home. The first one on her checklist, she says, I have a personal growth plan, or I am actively developing myself on a regular and consistent daily/weekly basis. And she's got a little note here at the end of this one in parentheses that says, oh, these are examples. I remember now. I'm looking at the book. She's got some things sometimes after the checklist item, she's got something in parentheses to help you understand more what she's talking about. So at the end of this one, she says, in parentheses, reading personal growth, leadership books, listening to personal growth, leadership audio books or podcast, watching personal growth and or leadership videos. So you're listening to this podcast right now. So you could check off that you're doing it. But what she's talking about is, do you have a personal growth plan? Meaning, as she says there, I'm actively developing myself on a regular and consistent daily, weekly basis. Like you may listen to a podcast every week. That's consistent. If you're doing something every week, reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a video, it could be some combination of all of them. It could be just one of them, but you do it weekly or daily. You need to be doing something daily or weekly, at a minimum weekly. Daily is even better. You might do less time, but you do it more frequently. That'll help you out. You got to decide what it is. But listening to something occasionally, randomly, you ain't got a growth plan. You got to be intentional. It's like where I share with you, like I've shared 1,000,000 times, I read every day. That's my growth plan. I read every day, just what she's talking about there, personal growth and leadership development content. Read, listen to audios, watch videos, some combination. Sometimes I do all three on the same day. But I'm reading something every day. Something on my phone, like an ebook, or I'm reading an article or something on usually LinkedIn. LinkedIn's got a lot of good content out there. And if you don't follow me and Ria on LinkedIn, maybe you want to look us up on LinkedIn. And we both have articles or newsletters. I publish mine weekly. I think Ria's is every other week, but we also put out content. We put out all types of posts on a daily basis. It's usually 1 to 3 posts that each one of us puts out each day. And it's something related to leadership development and personal growth. Not only do we have a plan, but we try to be a resource for other people, a free resource, just like this podcast. And yes, we got books you can buy. We got courses you can enroll in. You want to take it to another level? That's what you need to be doing. That's what I did. Still do. You got to figure it out. And I want to share something before I go to the next bullet. Rhea said here in a book, I'm just looking at it as I'm about to read the next bullet. And I think I just need to share this paragraph with you here. She says, remember the question relative to influence isn't really, is this right or wrong? But rather, is this moving me forward in life and helping me climb the ladder of influence? And she goes on to say, once you understand what you truly value, behaviors that aren't moving you forward should become easier to let go of. And she wrote much more about behaviors and habits in her book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, Become the Woman You Are Destined to Be. And that book right there, that book's really awesome too. And it's filled with principles that are relevant to men as well. She wrote it for women, but I've had some men read that book and tell me that book's awesome. I got a lot of value out of that book because it's principles. It's like teaching gravity. Gravity applies to men and women the same. The principles she shares in that book apply to men and women the same. The stories she tells probably apply to women, but the principles apply to men and women. So there's a lot of generic content in there as well. But if you have an important lady or young lady in your life, birthdays, Mother's Days, Valentine's, something like that, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me is the title, subtitle, Become the Woman You Are Destined to Be. Get them a copy. She's got a workbook that goes along with that. So you get a 2-book set if you want both of those. And that's a great, unique gift for someone, especially I would say, I mean, any woman, but especially a young lady who's about to graduate high school or maybe about to graduate college or some technical school, nursing school, anything like that. Definitely would make a unique gift to throw in the box or the bag when you giving them a gift for some other reason. Let's get back to the checklist. The next checklist item. I consistently practice applying what I'm learning. In parentheses at the end, she says, identify principles to apply in specific situations. So when you're going through the podcast, you're reading the book, you're watching the video, you're making notes, you're learning about something. Until you're consistently applying those principles in your life, and we're talking about at home, but it's anywhere you're applying the principles. What I'm teaching you now applies. Until you're applying it subconsciously without thinking about it, you haven't learned it. You've only learned about it. There's a difference between learning something and learning about something. You talk to me about what you do professionally, your job, I'm going to learn about it. But until I can actually go do it without anyone helping me, I haven't learned it. See what I'm saying? That's the way a lot of people listen to podcasts. They get in the car, they drive, they listen. They don't do anything different. They just drive and listen, pat themselves on the back. Or they watch a video, pat themselves on the back. Or they read a book, pat themselves on the back. If you ain't changing your life and getting better results, you wasting your time listening to all this stuff. So that's what she's talking about. Can you check off, I consistently practice applying what I'm learning? Not some of the stuff, not every now and then, but am I consistently doing it? Meaning you're being intentional. A lot of people drop the ball right there. The next item on this checklist, controlling yourself at home. I am regularly reflecting and learning from my mistakes. Uh-oh. That's a big one. So in parentheses, she says at the end, just a little tip to help us understand. She says, what went wrong? Why? What will I do differently next time to achieve a better outcome? She's talking about being proactive, taking responsibility, reflecting on the mistake. We're all going to make mistakes. We make mistakes every day. If you don't, you lying to yourself. You make them every day. I make them every day. That's just life. Things are changing. Hopefully we ain't making the same ones every day, but I'm guilty of that too. There's a lot of stuff I got to work on. There's a lot of stuff you got to work on. But the question ain't really about, are you making mistakes? The question, the checkbox is related to, am I regularly reflecting and learning from my mistakes? You got to decide. The next item on this list, I have resolved or am working to resolve any issues from my past that impact me negatively. And she's got in parentheses, trauma, childhood adversity, military service, sexual violence, etc. And I mean, she knows what she's talking about relative to that stuff. She suffered unbelievable trauma, childhood adversity, sexual violence from age 12 to 19. And I mentioned before, go check her TEDx talk out. Go to RIASTORY.com and look up the TEDx menu button there, TEDx, and check out her 7-minute TEDx video to see what she went through a little bit. Like I said before, when you know where she's coming from, everything she says and writes about, talks about, means a lot more to you. And this one means a lot. I have resolved or I'm working to resolve any issues from my past that impact me negatively. Can you check that box off honestly and openly? I had a lot of that to work on in the past. I've worked on it. You used to talk to me, I'd tell you I hate my dad. I didn't have a relationship with him. I started growing and learning and getting better, doing a lot of stuff we're talking about here. I tried to rebuild that relationship with him. Didn't work. So I still don't have a relationship with him. But the difference is I don't hate him anymore. I just don't like who he is as a person. We got different values. When you hear me talk about him like you do now, you don't hear and feel any hate in my voice. In the past, you would have. Before I was able to check this box right here, you would have. I would have all kind of negative things to say. I'd be angry. I'd be blaming, all that stuff. Nope, not anymore. He's just a different person. He's on a different path. I'm on my path. It's okay. Rhea was treated unbelievably, horrifically by her father and blamed by her mother for all she went through. She's chugging along. It ain't controlling her. It ain't impacting her negatively. I've actually never seen it do that. She's been able to check this box, even when it was happening somehow. She's an amazing person. But you got to figure out what that means to you. And it may not be any of the things I shared. Maybe something different. A lot of people carrying around a lot of baggage, and it cost them in their relationships, especially their close personal relationships. Another item to check. I'm aware of my emotional triggers and stay away from situations that provoke me to think, feel, or behave in negative ways. The thought-provoking content in the parentheses at the end, she says, which situation cause you to lose control? Choose to avoid them when possible. She's just asking you to look in the mirror. Are you leading yourself well? That's what control of self means in the language that I most often use. Personal leadership. Are you leading yourself well at home? You got to decide. And no matter what you think, if someone had a camera on you, watching you at home, watching you interact with your family members, no matter what you say and think, what would they see? What's actually happening? That's what you got to figure out. And again, don't beat yourself up. You're just looking for opportunities to improve. Things may be going great, but if you think you ain't got any room to improve, that's a problem, and it's hurting you at home. And if you don't believe that, you probably one of those folks who struggle to swallow the truth because you got a mouthful of pride and ego. Don't be that person. The next checklist item about controlling self at home. Here we go. I respond proactively to my family, even when I'm stressed, hurt, angry, and sick. And let me remind you, responding reactively reactively means you respond based on emotions. Responding proactively means you're responding based on values. And relative to your home, it's the values of building strong relationships, being seen as a leader. You got to decide, what does that mean? But you got to do it when you're nice and calm and everything's squared away. And you got to say, who are you and what do you value relative to being a leader in your home? And then you're saying what Rhea's saying. Can you check this box? I respond proactively to my family, even when I'm stressed, hurt, angry, or sick. Tips she's got for you in the parentheses at the end. Pause, breathe, and take control of emotions before speaking. Respond based on the importance of the relationship long term and your feelings for others rather than what they said or what they did. And another reason to have this book is, if you got this book, you need to make it like a tool and a resource. You go back and you revisit it. You open this thing up and look at this checklist from time to time. That's something you can't do with a podcast. That's why I recommend anybody who's listening to one of my series, because I got a lot of my books on a series just like this. But I always recommend people to get the book. Everybody thinks, oh, he's just trying to sell books. No, I'm trying to help you. I got books all over my bookshelf. The reason I got them, because I know the value of having a book. You ain't got to buy my books. Go buy somebody else's book. But I'm talking about my books right now because that's what I'm doing on this podcast. It's what I'm doing right now, talking about Rhea's book. I'm just trying to, don't let me trying to make some money, because I ain't got to sell you a book. I'm going to be all right if you don't ever buy anything from me. If you don't ever send me a penny, I'm going to be okay. Get past all that and realize there's a value in having a book. There's value in the podcast, but there's value in the book. And then there's a synergy between the two. And if you add in the video course, there's even more synergy. But now you got 3 different aspects going on, different things being said. All I'm doing, trying to help you get better. You got to decide what you want to do, what you're willing to invest in yourself or not. Let's go to the next bullet on this checklist for controlling self at home. She says, I accept responsibility for my thoughts, the stories I tell myself, my choices, words, and actions in response to what happens at home. Her tip in the parentheses, I do not make excuses. I don't blame others for my responses and choices. So when you're at home, if you're blaming the spouse or blaming your kids or whoever it is living with you, if you're blaming folks, you don't get to check this box. You get to check this box when you're taking responsibility for the thoughts you having, the stories you're telling yourself about why somebody did something or why they didn't do something they were supposed to do. My choices, words, and actions. There's a lot of parents, they blame their kids, especially their teenagers. And if you really knew these parents don't know nothing about personal development and leadership development, because they ain't ever been studying and reading this stuff. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know those children are who they are because of who the parents been for the entirety of their lives. But they're the kind of parents like to blame the kids. Once you start taking responsibility, like me and my son Eric, we had lots of troubles. So I've shared them in a lot of episodes about him. I take full responsibility for that relationship. I was the father. I should have been the leader. I was a leader. I was just a terrible leader. But I'm better now, and I was able to repair that relationship because I started doing these things that's on this checklist right here. You ain't got to do them, but also your life ain't got to get better. You got to decide what you want. Next item on this checklist, I'm intentional with my physical health, eating, exercise, and resting. The tip in parentheses, I intentionally focus on my health and keep my indulgences at healthy levels. You got to decide. Just like me, one of my things, I mean, I do exercise fairly often. When the weather's good, I mountain bike every other day if I'm home. Rhea and I go walk. When we go travel, sometimes we walk 10 or 12 miles around the city, just looking, hanging out. I eat healthy. Quit drinking sodas. I shared that before. Quit drinking alcohol. Started eating a whole lot of fruits and vegetables, organic, that I used to not eat, drinking raw fruit and vegetable juice. I can check that box. I can check a lot of these boxes now. There's still some, though, that I don't need to check them just yet. I'm still working on it. But used to, I couldn't check any of these boxes before I started my own personal growth journey in 2008. That's what I was thinking when I read this book. Reflect back to who I was in 2008 when I discovered this content. I couldn't check hardly any boxes in any of these chapters. I was pathetic. I didn't have a clue. I thought I was a man. I was making strong into the six figures. I had about 20 grand a month to blow, and I blew it. Pathetic who I was, and I thought I was the man. I was an idiot, knowing what I know today. The last tip right here, or the last item in the checklist, she says, I keep commitments to my spouse, my children, my family, and my friends. There's a whole lot of people can't check that box. You tell somebody I'm gonna call them back, you don't do it. You didn't kept your commitment. You tell somebody I'm gonna stop by and see you, you don't do it. You ain't kept your commitment. You tell your kids, hey, tomorrow when I get off work, we'll go grab the ball and gloves and go throw some balls, or get the bat and go hit some balls. Whatever it is you may tell them you're gonna do. I'm gonna hang out with you tomorrow when I get off work, and then you don't do it. Or I'll be there at so-and-so, and then you don't do it. The tip, she says in the end, in the parentheses, I don't make promises I can't keep. If I say I would do something, I do it. And that's the thing about commitments. Don't make them lightly. Anywhere. Here we're talking about at home. Those are the relationships you want to be the strongest. When you make and break a commitment, you create distrust. When you don't ever make a commitment, you create distrust. So don't make commitments lightly, because you don't want to break them. But also make commitments and then keep them, because that builds trust. And that's a principle applies at home and at work. So I interviewed Rhea in episode 334, episode 334. If you want to go back and listen to her talk about why she wrote this book, and just hear a little bit of her insights on this book. I can't remember if I shared that with you or not, but episode 334 here on the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast, and you can hear me interviewing Rhea and her just talking about this book in general. I think I did that when she first wrote the book. But I hope you're finding value in these episodes. I hope you do reflect. I truly hope you get the book, because it'll help you at a completely different level. You can slow down, you can look at it, you can highlight it, you can make notes, you do all that sort of stuff. I love my books. There's books I told Rhea just the other day. I said I probably got 5-10 books that I could throw all my other books away and just reread these books year after year after year. Keep doing what I've been talking to you about today relative to this checklist. Keep working on it. Keep learning. Keep applying. Keep it top of mind. And I probably never need to read another book. There's some books I have that they're just so good. That's what I want my books to be for other people. And that's what Rhea wants her books to be for other people. These people that wrote all these other books for us to read, they motivated and inspired us to write our own books for other people to read, because we all got a story to tell. And when you apply what Rhea's talking about here in the Ladder of Influence, you're improving your story. You're making your story more valuable to other people. One day you may want to write a book. You may want to get on stage. And it don't mean you got to make money. You can write a book and give it away for free. You can get on stage and talk for free. Rhea and I speak a lot for free. Most of our income comes from our books. Through our book deal, where companies buy 300 books or more at the moment. That could change, but that's what it is today. They buy 300 books. We pay all our expenses, travel to any of the 50 states. We speak for free. So they pay $5,400. They get $5,400 worth of books, 300, any combination of the titles, to hand out to their people, hopefully to lead book studies. And you go to bluecollarleadership.com/book study training. You watch a 45-minute video on how to use these books, any books, not just ours, any books, to facilitate personal transformation within other people. All right. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.